at me and tell me what you see. I look at you and tell you what I feel. Look at me and tell me what you see. I look at you and tell you what I
Welcome back to the last part of the Prophecy series, appropriately named Forsaken, because I'm pretty sure somebody was forsaken to make this shit. And don't be lulled into a false sense of security because I said the last film was the worst so far, because they say the absolute worst for last. But all in good time. Let's get started with the Prophecy Forsaken. The film begins recapping the most inconsequential moment from the last film. The priest reads from the prophet's lexicon, which causes him to die. Then Alison finds him and the book. So apparently the stuff with Danny, who John Reiget was, or any of the shit with Belial was so non-essential to the plot, it doesn't even get mentioned. Well, that shows the writer's complete lack of competence and understanding when writing a well-thought-out story. But come to think of it, this film is less of a story, more of a footnote to whatever ideas the writer had. We then get narration from Satan.
The last chapter of the Bible is called Revelations. It promises the end of life as we know it. If that's the case, you might want to ask yourself, is that really such a good thing?
What? No, it's not a good thing. The way he said that implies he expected the audience to think it was good, making me even more confident that the writers of this film were the kind of Bible-bashing whack jobs who pray for Judgment Day and for all those sinners to be destroyed, pretty much eliminating any interest I would have had in this film. But let's continue. We see a young girl playing with a basketball and then Satan appears to talk to her. And after seeing him in the last film, I'm really surprised that someone made up of so much wood didn't burn to coal in hell. But regardless, he asks the girl to give a message to someone, but we don't hear what it is, as Satan tells her to not forget her ball. So in between cuts, the girl's ball ends up in the middle of the road, and she looks like she's in a trance when she retrieves it, getting run down in the process. It all happens off screen because this film doesn't have the budget or the balls to show it. However, at that moment, Alison is on her balcony looking over the accident and quickly goes down to see if she can help. Alison gets outside bumping into someone on the way out, with everyone gathering around the child, and when Alison talks to her, she says she has a message for Alison, but now's not the time to tell her what it is. So Satan basically killed the child to send Alison a message. Now, although the child's death somewhat has a point later on in the film, the message she has for Alison is nothing that Satan could have just told her himself. Mostly, I think the scene was to illustrate that Satan is 100% evil, because we can't have shades of grey anymore, even though that was the entire fucking point of the last film, and to a lesser extent the series as a whole. We then move to our antagonist for the film, played by Tony Todd. And even though it's a series with Satan himself in it, they keep finding characters worse than him somehow. He's named Stark, and he talks with his henchman Dylan, the guy Alison bumped into, because he's been keeping tabs on her. Dylan starts assembling a machine gun as Stark has hired him to kill Alison.
And remember, it has to be one clean shot to the head. After all, she's not your average monkey.
That comment will be important later, and trust me when I say this, it will be monumentally stupid. The guy places a silencer on the machine gun and loads one single bullet. I'm not sure why he chooses a spray and pray machine gun for an assassination though. But the guy chooses to put the barrel in his mouth instead, because he doesn't want to kill for Stark anymore. But Stark tries dissuading the guy by saying that he'll definitely go to hell for the murders. However, if he does what Stark says, he'll pull some strings to get him into heaven. Which seems to work. Stark says he knew he'd see it his way, as always, which is when he realises he's being manipulated and pulls the trigger, killing himself, which is surprisingly proactive and unexpected of him. However, Stark, being an angel, doesn't like losing a lackey, so just like Gabriel did, he brings him back to life. Which is pretty weird, actually. I thought Gabriel could do that, since he was the angel of death, and that was his thing. But no, actually any angel can bring the dead back to life for whatever reason. And while we're on the subject, the character of Stark, specifically his name, shows just how lazy the filmmakers were. Because previously, we've had Gabriel, Uziel, Raphael, Michael, Zophiel, which are all actual angel names, or at least sound like it, unlike Stark. We then move to Alison in her apartment as Dylan appears holding her at gunpoint. He starts to look for whatever Stark wants from her, but doesn't find anything. And then he suddenly has a change of heart, considering Allison's difference to his other targets, and wants to help her now, which is such a harsh character whiplash, I'm surprised his spine isn't sticking out the top of his head. So Dylan and Allison leave her apartment and see many people outside watching them, which Dylan is suspicious of as they take his car and get out of there. Meanwhile, Stark has gotten into Allison's apartment to look for the book himself, which consists of looking at random pieces of paper and then trying the pillow of all places. He also tries a few cabinets. But then he actually gets competent as he senses the book in the wall, breaking it open, and inside is indeed the book, but actually it's just the cover wrapped around a phone book. Why would she hide the decoy so well? Surely the whole point of a decoy is that it throws the searcher off the scent. It should be easier to find, not harder. And come to think of it, later on in the film we actually see where she hid the real book, and it's actually in a less well hidden place than the goddamn decoy. What the fuck, Allison? Dylan takes Allison to see an acquaintance of his, who just so happens to be having some naked sexy time. Pointless nudity, the last vestige of a terrible writer. Dylan asks for the naked woman's clothes and a wig to give to Allison as disguise, which naturally the woman is pretty damn pissed about. But they leave and it ends as quickly as it began. Quite the exhibition of nudity there for no real reason. Dylan and Allison walk through many amounts of clothes they could have took instead. And I'm not opposed to nudity per se, but when it's just pointless exhibitionism that's there purely to give the audience a good ogle at some tits, then it's just shameless. Anyway, Dylan and Allison leave the building. However, Dylan, who seems to know a hell of a lot about angels, is aware they are being watched by beings called thrones, basically humans under the control of an angel, who take chase. But they manage to narrowly escape them, and Dylan tells Allison how to kill an angel.
You still have your gun, right?
Even if I got lucky with a kill shot, there'd be a dozen more in us in seconds.
What's the kill shot on an angel?
Right through the third eye.
Third eye?
The one you used to see God.
Well, that's a bunch of bullshit made up specifically for this film to make guns more effective against angels, which would be slightly forgivable if any angel ever got shot. They don't. And the stuff with the thrones was also specifically made up for this film to make Stark look more threatening, but it just comes off as someone shoving in crap they made up from a separate story and putting it into a prophecy sequel, which does nothing but make the series completely inconsistent now. Dylan gets Allison to wear the disguise, starting with perfume to mask her scent, and iron supplements to change the smell of her blood. And while she changes, Dylan explains the different angels and their hierarchy.
Your thrones and powers. They're heaven's grunts. Thick, slow-witted, totally lacking free will. Not a big threat if you see them coming first.
Okay.
Same goes for your dominions and virtues. But the cherubs, don't let that hallmark shit fool you. They'll rip your heart out first and bless you later. Now your arcs and seraphs. They're the real deal. They claim to take their orders straight from the top.
Stark?
Seraph, all the way.
Shit.
Oh boy, this film really is trying to reinvent the wheel that was the previous films. Because I think we can all agree that the prophecy would have been massively improved if they just made the whole thing more fucking complicated, yeah? Allison is now on her own as Dylan acts as a distraction and fights some of Stark's thrones, getting knocked out. But Dylan's disguise is actually worth a damn, as Allison is able to walk by two more, but not before one of them gives her a good licking. Stark talks with Dylan, roughing him up a bit, and he tries to explain why Allison needs to die, saying she'll cause a worldwide genocide. But it's obviously a bit more complicated than that, which has to do with the book. More on that later. Allison has returned to the disused building from the end of the last film, hoping to speak to Satan for advice. That's all he's here to do, by the way. Pop up, say something cryptic and potentially helpful, and then piss off again. Which is exactly what he does when Allison asks who's after her. Instead of a straight answer, he tells her about the book and how it'll soon reveal the name of the Antichrist. Which is all we get from him. Oh, and this little nugget of wisdom.
Did you know that revelation and apocalypse are the same word in ancient Greek?
Yes.
Good.
Why are you here, Lou? You're as useful as a fucking condom machine in the Vatican. And you were far more interesting when you were bloody Aragorn. Allison is forced to walk back to the city, and as she does, more of Stark's thrones appear taking chase. Allison runs across a field, but fortunately there's a funeral procession that she's able to hide in, Assassin's Creed style. And it's the funeral of the young girl from the start. That's why Satan killed her, so Allison could hide. Which makes complete sense. It's not like he was just speaking to her and could have said something to Allison. Back with Stark, he's still roughing up Dylan, and he gets him to go to Allison and convince her to leave the church, because Stark can't get Allison when she's in there, saying that Allison trusts him now, so it'll be easy. I guess his change of heart was just a momentary lapse of morals. And back at the church, Alison is hiding out when she hears the voice of the girl calling to her, as this is when she's going to give Alison the message Satan gave her. Which is, as prophecy series veterans already know, humans can't get into heaven because the angels don't want them there. That's seriously all the message is. Also again, the film shows us how bad the angels don't want us in heaven, but makes zero mention of the actual war with the good angels. The war part is very much downplayed, mainly because it makes heaven look petty and bad by having the angels fighting. Because we can't have heaven looking bad, can we? Because it's good and benevolent and something we must all hold dear. Do you see what I mean when I said this film felt like it was written by people who actually care about religion? And after that brief chat with the dead, Dylan comes into the church seemingly to help Alison out. Dylan convinces Alison he's there to help her, and she agrees to leave with him. He says he'll start the car, and she's to run for it when he's ready. However, it's just a long drawn-out ruse, because Alison gets to the car, but Dylan doesn't let her in and just sits there as she's captured by Stark's men. Once again, thanks for killing that child, Satan, it really helped a lot. Alison is taken directly to speak with Stark, who talks about how the apocalypse is a terrible idea, and he's there to stop it, needing the book to find out who the Antichrist is and kill him before he can start the end of the world. This film has to be one of the first where the apocalypse is shown as something that should happen, and it's a really good thing. The only other time that's been the message is in those god-fucking awful Left Behind movies. And if that doesn't tell you the intent for this film, I don't know what does. But anyway, Stark is doing some more posturing, but Alison pretty much immediately calls his bluff, knowing that he can't kill her because it wouldn't look good if he had blood on his hands. So Stark's pretty pissed off, and he just picks Alison up, throwing her, chair and all, against the wall, making more pointless threats.
I could whisper a simple suggestion and have you step in front of a speeding subway train. I could force a neighbor to roll you down a flight of stairs. I could put a baby in your belly that would rip its way out of your womb in 3 days.
Then why don't you?
Yeah, I think the simple fact that he hasn't done any of those things is a pretty decent indicator that those threats are completely hollow and incredibly pathetic. And after telling Alison that he will kill her if he has to, he then leaves, letting her go. So yeah, a really pathetic villain, with none of the ability to actually be a threat. What a pointless difference when compared to the amazing yet complex villain Gabriel. Oh, speaking of pointless, the chocolate teapot himself, Satan, shows up to talk to Alison again. She asks him what side she's actually on, and he talks about the apocalypse, telling Alison that Stark wants to prevent it because after Judgment Day, humans will be restored and the ones most loved by God will be by his side. Stark is jealous, and wants to keep humans on Earth. However, Satan wants the apocalypse to happen because anyone who doesn't go into heaven will go to hell, which puts Alison in a bit of a quandary. Oh, and don't forget, not once is it ever mentioned how fucked it is that the apocalypse is going to happen. No, that's common sense. God's not a huge celestial prick. He's just getting rid of the bad people, yeah? Prophecy 5, you're really testing my patience and ability to keep this film in a fictional context. In a bar, Dylan is drowning his sorrows while slowly rotting, and Stark appears to ask for his help. And once again, Dylan tells him to piss off, but eventually just helps him anyway, as they go off to follow Alison, who's on her way to check if the book is still safe and hidden. And in the park, Alison is walking until a random passerby pulls a knife on her and starts stabbing her to death. But there's a twist, as Simon talks to her and tells Alison that she's not done yet and to fight back, which she does, kicking the crap out of the guy and killing him. Confused? Yeah, you really should be. But don't worry, when it's explained why she survived, you'll be adequately pissed off, just like me. Stark and Dylan have gotten to an empty building because Dylan somehow knows that's where the book is hidden, and Stark gets him to lockpick the door open.
Faster.
You try it with no feeling in your fingertips.
That'll do grunt work.
Well, considering that picking a lock requires someone to feel the different weights of the pins within the tumbler, I'd say it's nigh on impossible to pick a lock with numb fingers. But hey, that's just me. Alison takes an alternate route underneath the building to get to the book, with Dylan and Stark looking for her upstairs. When she gets to the last page of the book, it tells her the Antichrist is called Mikhail Paun, who will have 4 distinct marks on his face. So she should now destroy the page, yes? It's already given her everything she needs to know. Yeah, but of course she doesn't. Instead, she alerts Stark to her presence, who breaks through the glass ceiling above to catch her. But Allison has already gotten out of the basement as she leaves a trail of book pages to distract and slow down Stark, which, because he's an idiot, he falls for hook, line and sinker, getting increasingly frustrated by not finding the right page. Allison's on the roof of the building with Stark and Dylan joining her for the final confrontation, as Stark tells her about the Antichrist.
He's here, you know. The child that will one day destroy your world. It's right here, this city.
That's convenient.
Yeah, thanks for that, filmmakers. You can't make it too difficult, can you? However, Stark has another bombshell for us, as he tells Allison why she was chosen.
Don't you find it a wee bit odd that you're still standing after all you've been through? You are familiar with the term Nephilim.
No.
What? You're seriously doing that? 10 minutes from the end of the fucking movie and you pull this shit? Because apparently the incredibly unique prophecy of the Nephilim Daniel being the one to kill Betrayal isn't unique at all. No, let's just make this character, who we've barely gotten to know, into another Nephilim for some simple as fuck plot convenience, yeah? Because she can't just be a random passerby like Daggett was. No, she needs to be a predestined hero. Because why not take everything that made the original film interesting and just dash its brains out? And as if to cap it all off, her angel father was Simon. Fucking hell. Let's just finish this crap, shall we? Right, this film doesn't deserve any more of anyone's time to waste, so let's finish this. Stark tries to get Dylan to shoot Allison, through the head of course, because that's how you kill angel folk now. And as Dylan has been a flip-flopping lackey, he first points his gun at Stark, but then he just shoots her anyway. And he shoots Allison in a way that causes her to fall off the building, scattering the pages everywhere, which somehow foils Stark's plan, because he couldn't in any way just get his hundreds of lackeys to pick up all the pages. But we have established he's an idiot, so never mind. And the film ends with Allison seeing Simon, who seems to be glad that she literally did nothing this entire time. And then, of course, a child picks up the page that tells the name of the Antichrist, and the child has 4 distinct marks on his face. But none of that really matters, because it's not like this shit's getting another fucking sequel. The at long last end. Oh boy. That was the prophecy Forsaken. Now, I'm not saying it's a badly written story, but to quote Dylan Moran, if you took a broom, dipped one end in brake fluid, shoved the other end up my arse, bounced me on a trampoline in a moving lift, and I could write a better fucking story on the walls. I'm not exaggerating one bit when I say that absolutely fuck all happens in this movie. Let's describe it, shall we? Allison hides the book, an angel wants it, Allison runs away a lot, finds out the name of the Antichrist, telling no one, and it has 0 significance, and then somehow foils the bad guy at the end. This film feels a lot like a second part climax to the last film. However, for that to be true, you must first have an actual climax. This is a nothing movie, written by people who give more of a fuck about the portrayal of the religion than actually giving a decent story that fits in with the first 3 much better films. And it really is sickening that this series went from one of the most unique and interesting films I've ever seen to this waste of time. Let's just call the Prophecy series a trilogy and be done with it, shall we? So this is the way the series ends. Not with a bang, but a whimper. How depressing. But we must move on, as is the way of things. And next week, we'll be taking a look at the interesting, but ultimately futile attempts at remaking of classic horror movies. So until then, I'll see you next time.